Hi everyone, Gerard Scarpacey here, craft hairdresser and co-founder of the Hairbrain community. Excited to bring you another great hour or so of education. Today we're in a very special place, very dear to my heart, the Vidal Sassoon Academy. Sassoon Academy here in Santa Monica. It's where I basically learned everything about hair and worked as a teacher. Worked with my really good friend who is now the North American creative director of Sassoon, Tracy Sacassit. Say hi, Tracy.
Applause, applause, everyone.
This is our beautiful model, Isabella, and Tracy's going to be sharing some of her technical expertise on building shape and then also creating texture technically. So this is an interesting conversation that we'll have where there are lots of ways to create texture, whether it be texturizing, pointing, slicing, disconnection, but it can also be done with lots of technical control of the hair. So let's pick up, Cal, let's see what Tracy's up to, and Tracy, please share.
Yeah, thanks. Okay, so what I've done is I've started the line and I'm working, I want to have a bob look first of all. I think you have to have the look in mind. I want to have a bob look that has a lot of texture, volume, fullness. This hair though is very, very straight, paper straight. Not a lot of texture to it and stays very close to the head. So I think you have to really think of the technique, the right techniques to use to bring out the best in it. So what I've decided to do with Isabella's hair is to work a bob with graduation. And so I've started horizontally and I worked on the skin with the first section, and right after that first section I started elevating the hair, working more horizontally through and up the back of the head, highest elevation here. That same length comes through, drops down slightly in the front, but the graduation comes through to the front. Now, the reason why I did this approach, because it gives the hair a bevel. I mean, this is wet hair now, and the bevel will give the hair width or volume. And that's what we have to think of graduation in that way as well. What will it do to hair? So we can decide when we need to use it. So I think if you have the look in mind, the technique follows to get the result. So first of all, getting an edge that's looser. If you graduate a line, the edge is it's gonna provoke movement and the edge will be looser, and you can already see some texture coming out. But more importantly, I think with her hair, when you look at it, if it's cut as a classic bob, which it has in the past, it just lays very straight, very blunt, very close to her, and you just get that kind of sheet of hair that hangs down, which is gorgeous. But when you want texture or volume, you need the graduation to get the edge to come out and be wider. And you can see that even now on wet hair that's happening.
So for those of you just joining us, we're here at the Sassoon Academy. I think you can probably tell you've seen this room before. We've broadcasted from here many times. Today we're with Tracy Sacassit, North American Creative Director for Sassoon, and also one of my dearest friends. We were assistants together, which I'd love to talk about. We were just telling her model, Isabella, who's only 20 years old, that we were assistants together 25 years ago. So we were shampooing heads together before she was even born, which is kind of amazing, and also learning our craft. But I want to encourage you guys to ask questions. We've got one of the best technical educators in the world here. Any questions you have about hair cutting or the industry, we'd love to hear your questions. I want to give some shout outs to some of our friends that are watching. Danielle Green, Rick Bennett, these are great friends of ours. Gretchen Johnson, glad to have you here. Milo Maximovic, our good friend from also Boston.
Everyone.
George Alderete, Raina Twiggs is here, Joe Profita.
Fantastic audience, Tracy. Nice.
My favorite people.
You're in for a great lesson now with one of the best hair cutters that I know, Tracy Sacassit. So share your questions and let's make this an interesting, engaging conversation. So Tracy, I see you're moving on to the side here. I think lots of times people are very afraid to graduate the side.
Sure,
You know, you see a lot of...
For good reason.
Yeah, you see a lot of haircuts that are really graduated in the back and then really heavy on the side.
Yeah.
So I noticed that you're elevating there. Can you give us some tips on how to get graduation into the sides without boffing the whole thing off?
Yeah, I mean, even the first section I lifted in the fingers, because if you want to have a hair that has texture to it, you need to lift it. So even from the first section, it's going to give that jagged edge. Think of an edge that's more sketched than a straight line with a Sharpie. So straight away, once it's in your fingers, and then the higher you lift, the more that kind of opens up. So once you've got the edge the way you want, it's then about pushing the volume up where you want. So once I get in a couple sections, and then we'll section off the edge, leave it so I don't risk cutting it, and just work with the hair that I want to create the volume in. And you lift up as high as you want your weight to go. Once you're at 90, we know though, the volume's going to be then taken away.
You start to flatten it out.
Starting to flatten it out, yeah.
Yep.
Exactly.
And beautiful hair to demonstrate these techniques on. It's just so responsive.
See it so good, yeah.
So,
one wrong move though, you're going to see as well. So
you got some love coming in. Milo Maximovich says, "Love your touch and technique." Tracy Fausto Lopez says Tracy is the best. And Patricia Lynn Loss is watching. She loves watching you cut hair. So talk to us a little bit about, you know, where you're stopping the graduation. I can see your section seems a bit more organic. It's not just a straight line at the round of the head. So maybe, Kelly, we can get a shot of what Tracy's doing here.
This section,
what do you call it, like a keyhole disconnection?
Yeah, it's a keyhole. An old school skeleton keyhole. So it's a triangle at the front, and then from the narrowest part of or the apex of the triangle is a circle in the crown. All right, that'll be for disconnection, and I'll talk about.
Can we see that one more time, Tracy?
Yeah. So narrow here, wide into the temples, and then a circle at the top.
Thank you.
Yeah. So keyhole, right?
Yeah, it's a very useful type of disconnection, right? Because you can get, you know, the shape to go a little bit higher above the ears, but keep more weight around the front and the crown. So lots of things that can be achieved with this shape through the top. An alternative to just a horseshoe.
Yeah. And you know, when we talk about disconnection, we talk about how hair falls. So with circles, it tends to fall more evenly. So with this shape at the back, I want the crown to fall evenly over from ear to ear. So that's why we have the circle there. It's a small circle because I don't want it to drop over heavy. You have all the intricate work on the underneath, and then the weight of the top drop down, you don't see it. So a smaller circle, so there's less hair. And then she has a fringe, a long fringe, and we're going to go for more of a curtain fringe center part that wraps around the cheek. We're going to let that grow out. So I'm also thinking ahead for her. So this kind of section, eventually, in the next couple of haircuts, we'll start incorporating the fringe into the shape. All right? But for now, we'll have the fringe, and then there's just these gentle lengths falling over the layer that I'll do later.
Fantastic.
Does that make sense?
So, you know, Tracy, I have a question as you're working here. You know, what originally drew you to Sassoon? Like, I have my own story. I can remember I got into the industry and I looked around and I was just like, wait, and this is like 1990. I was like, wait, maybe this isn't for me, because I didn't see the artistry and the dedication that I thought I was going to see. Then I went to the IBS show in New York and I walked around and I found the Sassoon booth, and I didn't even really know anything about it, and it was super literal for me. I was like, okay, that's where the artistry and the technique was. But what's your story? How did you get started with Sassoon?
Well, I think what drew me to Sassoon visually was the work that was done. You know, the quality of the work that was done, the styles and the looks, that was really attractive to me. And then the idea that somebody could teach you how to do it. Because I worked in a salon for a number of years before I worked for Sassoon, and it was a lot of trial and error, and it was frustrating, and it wasn't always fun. And I can honestly say now, when I do hair, I'm so in love with it, even now, because I understand it, I have control of it, I explore it, I create. It's not, it happens, and it challenges me.
So we're going back now over 25 years, and now here we are, fast forward, and you're a North American creative director for Sassoon. How has it changed for you? How has it remained the same? Like, someone out there is trying to understand, you know, there's this incredible legacy. I know you touched on 65 years. The next collection is celebrating Sassoon 65 years. Yeah. You know, what's changed and what stayed the same?
Yeah. Well, I think what's the same is everything is underpinned by technique, the strength of our training, the strength of our team.
And when you say technique, you know, what do you mean by that? Like, literally?
I think literally the technique is what's actually the craft that's put in to create.
Meaning like being really great with your hands. Like, literally you can actually do things with your hands really, really well.
Yeah, but also the ideas behind it.
And understanding
the understanding of it has to come first, even before the hands, right?
Yeah. So the combination of really understanding what you're doing and then being able to execute it really, really well, yeah. Which is you would think that everyone in hairdressing or every craft has that, but they really don't, you know. So, and I think yes, Sassoon still kind of holds the, you know, our champions of that. What's changed? What do you feel is new or fresh that you guys are doing?
Reach in here.
Yeah.
Well, I think, like I said, what we're doing this year, we're celebrating 65-1 is the name of the collection. Celebrating in October at Salon International, we are celebrating 65 years of Sassoon. So 65 years ago, Vidal opened the first salon on Bond Street, which is amazing. We're using that heritage and explored that heritage for the looks of today. So I think the heritage is rich and dedicated to, and I think, you know, people still want to carry it forward, and I think that's really important. But I think I don't know how to really explain it. I think the best way to explain it is to go through the decades, dare I, okay? But if we start at the 60s, and we go from hair that was, you know, modeled the geometric nature of pop culture, and that was when Vidal started, and he thought hair should be the same diameter from roots to ends, hence the bob, and all the geometrics, and that's when the geometrics were practiced, studied, and talked about, and created, yeah? Then there was the 70s of freedom, of flow, and movement, and spirit, and the same came through with hair, right? 80s, very decadent era.
There was definitely some decadent hair in the 80s. I've seen some incredible, you know, the Firebirds and all these type of awesome shapes.
And that kind of spoke through with the hair as well, right? 90s,
so before
90s,
we go through the 90s, I know you've changed into your technique here. And lots of people are wondering, you know, what's the change and what's happening here. So let's catch up on that, and then we'll go back to the 90s. That's our generation.
Yeah. So what I wanted to do is create these little, again, it's texturizing without texturizing. So what we've been working a lot on is a technique called reverse layering. So it's a horizontal way of layering hair with a disconnection creates a lot of space and movement in hair. And I wanted to try to work on something a little bit different, move on from there. So I want to work, and a shake is really, I think, a shag, I think is something quite editorial and cool and modern in hair now. So you want to kind of think of different ways to layer around the face and create freedom and movement in hair, especially straight hair like this. But I like to challenge myself with the technique, like you said, Gerard. So the idea of creating texture through technique and not texturizing. So what I've done is take the first section at the front of the ear, and I created a concave layer. I've taken the hair, I've lifted it up, I used the length that I've created, and I've pulled it back and layered it, okay? So what happens is it's shorter here, longer there, so we get this beautiful soft length on the face, yeah? Then the next section, same kind of width, about comb's width, I guess. As soon as I pick this up, I pick the whole section up. I let the first one drop out, drag past it, created another one. So you figure you have short to long, short to long. They don't connect, so within the shape we have this little texture going on. It's only 3 sections, I'm only going to the mastoid.
I'm going to give a few shout outs there. I think that, you know, again, if you've seen a lot of what Sassoon's been doing with, like, you call it reverse layering? Yeah. They've been doing this horizontally. And I think when Tracy was talking about doing this vertically, I thought that would be a really cool thing to see. So it's just these little mini, almost concaves, right? Short to long, short to long, short to long, creating disruption and movement in the hair.
And you see, you get that in the hair.
In the meantime, let's give out a few shout outs. Wayne Woodruff is watching,
hey,
our
Wayne.
dear friend and also former teammate. My good friend Ashley Kowalski. We worked on some beautiful hair together in our days.
Applause.
We've got Sid Sotom,
hey,
also someone who used to work here in the academy. So lots of friends watching, guys. Thanks for your love. Any questions that you have for Tracy or myself about hair or the industry, we thrive on those questions. Tracy's North American Creative Director for Sassoon, for those of you that don't know. We're here in the Academy in Santa Monica, which is a fully dedicated academy, a 4-story building with teachers and classrooms and hundreds of models everywhere. We're in one of those classrooms here, which I spent...
Quietly tucked away.
Quietly tucked away. I spent plenty of time here myself over the years teaching classes. So it's very nostalgic for me. But this is the Sassoon Academy, a great place to come and do training ranging from classic cut and color all the way up to what we consider master class level. And there's some exciting stuff happening, I believe, in November. I think it's November 10th. The international creative director, Mark Hayes, will be in town. Is that launching the new collection? Tell us about the master class.
Yeah, I mean, we launched the new collection in London at Salon International, which is just a couple of weeks prior to that. It's the beginning of October. And from there, Mark comes here, and we do what we call a master class. So the master class is, you know, a high level of instruction by a high level of individual.
Now, is anyone able to attend that class?
Yeah, so the master class itself is a look and learn. And then the other opportunity, which I think is even cooler, is the hands-on that we also have the 2 days after. And that's for 14 people. And they can stay and cut hair with Mark and I and color hair with Lucas and
So on November 10th, there's a look and learn with Mark and the whole team. You guys present models, do some live demonstrations, teach and share the collection. And then the following day, there's another class that's on the 11th, where people can take hands-on. Is that a one-day class or is that multiple days?
2 days.
2-day hands-on class.
Yeah.
So November 10th, 11th, and 12th. If people want to learn more about this, so they go to Sassoon.com?
Sassoon.com, yeah.
Yep. All right, so now you're starting. Let's walk us through this whole process since you're starting on the second side.
Okay. So the second side, layering, how do I know what length? The length is determined by the length of the line. So as soon as that dribbles out of my fingers, it's pretty safe to say I could start my layering technique.
So this falls out because of the head shape and the elevation, so you're keeping all the length, yeah? Because again, people could get a little bit nervous about where to layer.
Yeah, sure. Especially here in this spot, and over the ear is another spot. So, you know, I think a classic layered bob really teaches you how to be able to layer hair whilst maintaining the integrity of the edge.
Right.
You know, or the line that you've already worked really hard on.
Which is a really important lesson when you're, you know, kind of learning to layer the hair. Because if you cut it to one length and then layer it and take away the length, you've got a problem.
We've just worked really hard to do something and take it away. So I'm on my second section. The first section's is the front of the ear at least. So whatever that is will be my section that carries through. So it's going to be different on each individual.
They're all kind of like individual channels that are cut short to long.
Yeah.
So you don't necessarily need a guideline from the previous one?
Yeah, the guide's there. As soon as it drops out again,
Yeah.
then I can go.
Yeah.
So each one's a little bit longer than the previous. And as I go back, I know I have to elevate higher too, because there's less hair to drop out, right?
Aaron Wang is wondering if it's flat layers, and I know that that's kind of a general term, but this will definitely remove weight and help to flatten the hair, won't it?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you just have to remember the basic rule of thumb. The higher you lift, the softer it is. So that lets you do this haircut on anybody else, understanding things like that. The general terms work great when you first start learning, so you have something to go by. But the principles are the things that guide you.
Your friend Raymond Okazaki is saying hello from Beijing, Kansas City.
Yeah.
I know you go out there quite often for seminars.
I haven't been for a while, but I love it there. And Raymond's great. Hi, Raymond.
So, you know, Tracy, we talked about how people can come and take classes here. If you wanted to come to Santa Monica or go to London, you can go and kind of camp out and take classes. But do you guys also visit people's salons and do more local education?
Oh my gosh, yeah. That's how I know Raymond. I met Raymond.
That's what reminded me. I know you're always there.
Yeah, met Raymond. It's what we call Sassoon Direct, where we can come to a salon or academy and do a day or two or a week or however long they want us there, within reason, I think. And that's really amazing because that's a great way, that's a great team exercise. That's a great community exercise. If you're one of those salons that kind of has a great relationship with all the hairdressers in the community, it's a great way to bring everybody together and have a fantastic, I'm going actually, somebody who does that, I have to mention him, KG at Salon KG in Utah. This will be like my 15th year going there. I go there every year for the same time, and the morning demo is everybody in Utah.
I want Kelly to get a shot of this side. Let's turn around because it's just so effective what you just did. You know, we were talking about, obviously you can create texture through point cutting, slicing, razor cutting, all things that I love. But you can also create texture through technique. And I think that that's something, again, we should all be exploring. if you're doing something one way all the time, learn something else. So I think this is beautiful to see. I want to give a few more shout outs. Your creative partner, Richie Rivera, is watching.
Richie.
North American color director. I'm sure he'll be here for the master class working with you.
Yep, Richie will be here for sure.
And Dennis Dottori, who's one of the, there's a page on Facebook here called Old School Sassoon, which I often stalk. Which I find very interesting. Lots of people, over the 65 years of the Sassoon history, you know, there's been a lot of people involved with it, and they contribute stories and photos on Old School Sassoon. And I think, again, everyone in the industry should check that out because our heritage is so important as hairdressers. Vanya Mooneyham says, "Hey Tracy, great seeing you live. I have my whole team in the back room watching with me. Miss you."
Vanya.
Again, guys, I'm George Scarpese. We're here in the Sassoon Academy in Santa Monica. It's kind of the flagship academy here in the U.S. And we're here with Tracy Sackasitz. This is her home base. Even though she travels the country, works in all the salons, teaching, and does in-salon classes, this is kind of the home base here. And Tracy's sharing with us a beautiful, simple technique, just super beautifully executed. Started with a line in graduation and doing these kind of reverse layering, but applying it vertically. So she's got that completed through the bottom. Now working up into this, not a horseshoe, but a keyhole disconnection. Yeah.
I needed a marker, I could draw it. I had one of my students draw it yesterday.
So again, something to think about. Lots of times we just separate the top from the bottom with a horseshoe, but sometimes we want higher and lower points. And here it's a keyhole, so it goes up and comes down and around.
So where my fingers
let's see how
are,
that applies. Yep.
the layering can go a bit tighter and higher, so right in the center top of the head. So it tapers in that area, which is also the area over the ear where there's less hair. So strategic in that as well. So I can get more layering out of that hair there's not as much there. So the taper is right over the top of the ear, comes down into a fringe section. Fringe section is the area from the curve of the head, temple to temple. And then in the crown, it just wraps around. It's a circle. And the reason for that is so that the disconnection, you know, circles are even, aren't they? If you get it right, and then the disconnection will evenly fall over. The underneath is graduated, and the reason that is so that we get this beautiful kind of fuller shape from this paper straight hair, and we get the texture from the edge, all right? And then the layering, just little panels, front of the ear, brought the hair back and up. Once the outline dropped out, I layered through, flat to the head. Next section over the ear, same thing, 4 sections. So you can see where the layers stop and the weight. So there's a very kind of flat little layered shape, and then the weight's kind of right sat behind the mastoid round of the head. So it's weightiest here, flattest in there.
Great comment coming in from Raina Twigs. I love watching Tracy cut hair and seeing her immediately play with the section to see what it does. So we've talked a lot about technique and being technical. Can you talk about the visual? What are you looking for as you play with that hair? I think sometimes people cut like they're following a blueprint, and then at the end it's like a surprise. Well, what did I get?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, it's material that we work on, so you have to understand it, and you have to visualize it. I mean, visualizing is the most important thing. And teaching is really interesting. What I realized in teaching, as long as I have, the students won't even look up at their work because they're training. So they're
looking at their hands.
The client knows that they're a trainee, so they won't kind of look at the client in the eye almost, you know. And so they don't even look up at their work even for that. Or they get tunnel vision. They're just like in that zone of where they're working.
From a fingertip to the knuckle is all that exists.
But it's super important because you got to make sure. I mean, I showed the picture, the reference picture for her hair that was sent by the agency. I showed it to one of the teachers, and they were like, "Oh, are you going to dress that texture into the hair?" And I was kind of like, "No, I'm going to cut it into the hair."
Wait a minute, this might be a first. My brother is actually watching.
Frankie!
Yeah, say hi,
He must
Tracy.
miss you.
Yeah,
So
I miss
glad
him.
you.
Yeah, I miss him. I haven't seen him in a couple of weeks, but I'll be back in New York this week, so I'll see you soon, bro. Great to have you joining.
I love it.
My mother always used to watch, so it's great to see my brother pop up here.
All right, so I'm just going to miss this really, really quick. So so the material is important, what you do. So the look in mind first. Understand the material you're working on. The technique is behind all that. If you do it the other way around, you might get a cool little haircut, but the work then becomes in the styling and the blow dry and the product. So those things I think should be the accessories, and those things should be the versatility, not what makes it happen. Yeah. So I still.
So in terms of dampening the hair now, I mean, you kind of were working it wet to dry, and now you've dropped this down, and it looks like you kind of spritzed it back down. Why did you feel you wanted it to be damp again?
Because it's too spindly and it can't be clean. So I only wet the hair to be clean. If I could wet it dry and be as clean, if I could cut it all dry and be as clean as I want it to be.
Yeah, because her hair is just incredible. I mean, it doesn't even need a blow dryer or flat iron. It's just shiny, smooth. There is actually color on there, even though it looks completely natural. So that's a beautiful testament to natural, being able to color hair to make it look natural.
Okay, so I'm going to just take a little section under here to find my layering. Get a visual on the length of that, because I want what I'm going to do above it to be longer than it, so it'll be disconnected. Okay. To get a better section. So you just think about where you want this hair to fall. You can check in before you cut it. Amazing cheekbones in here, so it's really square from there to there. So I want this kind of length to drop into that kind of area. Long enough that it actually is layered but looks like graduation. So that's all the length that you choose.
So it's all about overlapping it, and then where it collapses, it'll kind of form a little pocket that looks like graduation. Cutting that square line over the top. We can actually even just follow it all the way through with your hand, and you'll see how it just cups right over.
The other thing is square makes round, right? Yeah. So you see, that just gives you your little, and then it's all about the lips with that little baldy shape on the lip. I love it on her.
Oh, hold the phone. Martin Duff is watching.
Hi, Martin.
Hey, Martin.
They just did Fashion Week with Libertine yesterday.
Straight off the runway, right home to watch Facebook. Awesome to have you here. All right, so now is that a second guide?
No.
Oh, that was just the bang that's dropping out. Sorry.
Yeah, that's the fringe.
So you're following that through.
Just square layer. Both sides together.
So the whole top will just be square layered, or is there going to be a little change of pace somewhere?
I keep it simple. I've got the little irregular layered shape through the underneath.
And then choosing this square line, because when it falls over, it's going to kind of fall over these textured layers and make like almost a graduated effect, a weightless graduated effect.
Yeah, length is volume in hair. That's one of the things that I think I talk about a lot most recently. And maybe I'm just discovering that as well in delicate ways and very detailed ways. So, what I mean by that, it just is how much the hair could come away and do something in expansion. So length is volume. So you want to think about that. I don't want the hair, if her hair is overly layered, it's just going to sink down into the head. And the image showed me has body, it has texture, it has shape to it. It's not just deconstructed.
Our good buddy Matthew Yastrzemski is wondering about the guideline. Is it traveling, or is everything coming to one place?
Straight up, so it's,
From
I guess...
floor to ceiling.
Yeah, so what we call square. And, depending on how technical you want to get about the over-direction, it's what I think Gerard coined as ever-increasing over-direction.
I didn't actually coin that. I believe I found it in a very old Sassoon manual.
Did you?
I found it in a very old...
You used to use it, though.
I did, yeah. It's as the head shape curves, each section has an increasing amount of over-direction.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm going to give a shout out to Richard Kavanagh, a good friend from Australia, who was recently featured on the Hairbrain Conversations podcast. Great to learn his story and about the exciting things he's developing. Richard Rivera is back. Ian Amazing Graham is watching. Matthew Yastrzemski is watching. So we've got people all over the world. We've got Australia and England. We've got Croatia. Word up, Croatia. We love it over there. And we're all here, either here or here, watching Tracy and learning from her. We're at the Sassoon Academy. Her beautiful model, Isabella. Is that right, Isabella or Isabella? Isabella. Tracy created a line with graduation, did a fun little reverse layering technique, but did it vertically through the sides, and that is now layering through the top. So any questions, comments, anything you guys want to talk about, give us a shout out here. I'd love to discuss it with Tracy. All right, so now we can see you're moving into the back.
Yeah, I'm going into the round part of this disconnected section. So, and you can also, see what I did, the layers before, and the distance between is lessening as I get to the back. You can see it, Kels. There's the disconnection from the layered I did prior, and then That's what comes over it. So you can kind of see the distance. I'm watching as the hair falls as well. I want the layers to fall into the graduation. I don't want the back to look layered. So that's happening. So I just blend it correctly.
And you know, if it was to fall over the outline, would that be perhaps you were over directing too much or lost your guideline? What could someone do to correct that?
Well, if it falls over, that's a good thing because that means it's too long.
Right.
If it falls short, you're in it. You're just going to go with it, right? So if it falls over, you can simply just go back and over direct it forward. You know, over direct from here. You can just pull it back a little.
I'm going to turn around so we can see the side that you're just working on there. Yeah.
So the layer I just cut falls right into. Ding.
Ding ding.
Couldn't have done that, but try.
Yeah, I mean a lot of you know great hair cutting, especially using this kind of geometric precision approach, is about understanding cutting it in the air where it's going to fall.
Yeah,
you know, I think a lot of times very visual freehand cutting is about cutting it where it's already falling, where, you know, because you're letting it fall and you're kind of cutting right into it. But the whole point of this demonstration was to show there is another method, and one isn't better or worse, and I'm sure you use both. You use both. You do plenty of freehand cutting, as do I, but to be able to also understand technical cutting, that, you know, there's a cause and effect. I can bring something over here, knowing that when it falls all the way over here, it's going to do a certain thing. And, you know, that definitely takes a lot of trial and error and training, and a great place to kind of get that training is the Sassoon Academy. It's kind of one of the things they specialize in, helping you understand technique.
Yeah,
maybe that's what technique is.
Our ABC class is full every single week, all week, and in the summer it was double every single. And we run two, an ABC 1 and an ABC 2. And it's so much information, 5 days isn't enough. But the 1 and 2 very simply is, the 1 is a prerequisite. If you haven't been to Sassoon, we want to build the common language and build up the information, because otherwise it could be confusing and a bit of an overload, because it's a world of information in a short period of time. And so we encourage people to take ABC 1 if they haven't been before. But we also have people that have come over the years regularly, like Rick. Rick's on with us, Rick Bennett. He's been here, I don't know, more times probably than anyone. And he is so talented.
Well, he took over. What was the other gentleman from Oklahoma who used to come?
Yeah.
What was his name? Yeah, he was, I think, maybe one of Rick's mentors. And when I was a young teacher here, and he was an older man, he was probably already in his 70s. And he used to come every year and take the classic cut class.
And Rick's on there, and still he is just like, I get it, or this, or that.
Well, I mean, some people have that belief that you're only as good as your foundations, and you always need to keep working on your foundations.
There's levels to everything, isn't there? I mean, that's how I explain it, you know? When people come and they're like, why would you even want to cut hair that clean? And there's people that say it, believe it or not. And if you want to, it's there, and you can take it as far and as good as you want. And if you don't, you at least understand what you're doing to the level you want it. Yeah. Right?
And to me, it's just being obsessed with the craft. I want to know everything.
Yeah. But
so
not
I do want to know.
Obsessed.
Yeah, I want to know the most shredded way to cut hair, the most clean way to cut hair. Because, you know, I've been doing this for 30 years. I hope to do it for another 30 years. And what I have discovered is anything that you at one time thought, ew, that's not the right way to do it. If you do it long enough, your head turns around and you start to say, hey, maybe that is a good way to do it. Otherwise, you're just like a machine doing the same thing over and over. So I encourage you all, if you haven't done this type of hair cutting, if you haven't been really precise and geometric, don't be afraid, and give it a try and see what happens.
I mean, this is something this kind of look would be something we explore more in what we call salon creative. But I don't encourage people to take it until they really understand the basics, because it's just multiplying the technique. So all the creative is a different balance and proportion for the moment, and it's multiples of techniques and shapes in one look. So you have to understand the purest forms first, and the ABCs, you know, to me, they're not boring. The classics aren't boring. The classics are purism. So that's the thing that you need to practice longer than anything else to get good at it.
You know, I think the interesting thing for me, we were talking earlier about history, and obviously Vidal gets credit for a lot of things, but the thing to me that I give him the most credit for is elevating hair cutting and hair dressing to be with the design arts, like architecture, graphic design. You know, it was always a part of fashion and, you know, a part of romantic and whatever those words are. Hairdressing was always that. But to make it like equivalent to visual design, like graphic design, architecture, and to truly elevate it in that respect. And I think that to me is the legacy of Sassoon and what we're still seeing here. All right, we can talk about this stuff all day, but let's get back into this incredible haircut.
I'm just checking into the front shape. So we have a fringe growing out under there, but it actually looks like part of the haircut now, which I love because it's a grow out phase, and I hate when a client comes in and says, "Well, just leave it because it'll grow out," because you know it should always have a look. Hair should never be in a grow out phase. It can have a haircut all along the way. It can have a look all along the way. You just have to put the effort in towards it.
All right, here's a fun question coming in from Alex Lepsky. I believe that's how you pronounce it. Hi, Tracy. If you could describe your work using only 2 words, which words would you choose?
Good one.
Yeah, I like that.
You can get back to us later, Trey, if you need.
Thoughtful.
Thoughtful, and funny enough, that's exactly how Dennis described your work. Thoughtful. It was just described as thoughtful work. Nice to see clean and thoughtfully done work. Yeah. That's what Dennis said.
And thoughtful in 2 ways. So I can give you one answer, but it has 2 parts to it. So does that qualify?
Yes.
All right. Thoughtful to the technique and how it's done, and the level and skill set up behind it, and the standard, and thoughtful to the individual that it's on. That's, to me, they're my inspiration.
Very Sassoon. You minimalized it to 1 word. Yes.
I can minimize anything.
You took away the superfluous. Yeah.
All right. So this side, the hair falls a little bit lower than. Do you see that? So the only thing that can mean is my section was lower. So let me just tie that into the graduation. So my circle was lower on this part of the head. So I will, for those of you who are just joining in, maybe I could recap at this point, show you what the back was simply done, simply in theory. I sectioned for a bob. I'll show you, and I'll go through it.
And so you're having a look back now because this side of the keyhole perhaps was a little lower.
Longer, so I think it's
so you have a little bit more overhang.
Mm-hmm. So, and I checked it up here, it's even, so it's not in the layering. So, cut the first section on the line, and everything after that was done in the fingers, slowly elevating. So horizontal graduation. And you know what, this is a technique that is, a lot of people do not understand and do not know, but it is so useful for this type of hair. Coarse, thick hair, super fine, straight hair that want to have a bob look, but want it to bevel. Most of the time people will cut the bob in, they're like, oh, that, no elevation, no nothing, as you learn to bob. But realizing the material it's on, if you just cut a bob on her, it literally is just lifeless. It's just all about the edge.
It's like a closed book.
Yeah, I guess, yeah.
It's just going to hang there like a closed
book. Just
book.
hangs there, yeah.
We want to get a little bit of those pages flapping in the wind.
And then when you have really thick hair, it just thatches out. It's too much in one point. So this kind of graduation takes the thick hair, allows it to have an edge, and then the curve. And that's what even without a blow dry. So if you can get hair to do what you want it to do wet, that's even better. I'd rather spend more time, I always say to the students.
How do you determine the amount of elevation? Is it purely visual? You're looking at the hair? Are you using the head shape? Is it the same amount of elevation every time you do this type of technique? Yeah. Give us just some insight there, because I think that could be the most challenging for people to understand.
Okay. Well, I go back to the basic principle. The higher you lift, the higher the weight. So you have to know where you want the bevel and the weight. And if you're ever unsure, before you cut, check in. So that would bring it up there. Higher, would bring it higher, right? So here, just takes the edge and tucks it. The more you lift, the more that edge opens up. And that's
so basically, it's customized each time. You just
it has to be, yeah. That's where you nail it for the individual. That's where it becomes this haircut's Isabella's and no one else's. You know. That's the difference.
Here's a great question coming in. I love this one from our friend Ian Graham over in England. Tracy, just for fun, what was your most frustrating classic haircut that constantly challenged you and why? And we trained together back in 1991, 2, 3. So I can be, I'll be there to make sure. So what did you find most
I don't know
challenging?
if there was one. I think it was all of it. You know, I never really got frustrated because I think it was always exciting to not be able to do it because I wanted to kind of conquer it. So that was kind of the draw, more than the fear or the frustration.
For
Individuals,
me,
I think people.
yeah,
can be
people can be
frustrating.
frustrated. Yeah.
And I have a lot of patience. So sometimes not being able to do what you want to do because of an individual's deterrent to it. A deterrent to it.
You know, for me, I remember getting into the training program and doing really, really well in the beginning, the one length and some of the early techniques. Then we got to the graduated bob, and I just really, in all honesty, we had
Graduated bob is hard.
Yeah, and that particular approach that we were doing at that time was very difficult. And if you got the wrong model, forget it. It just would never look good because it had to be really specific. And I, didn't have enough skill to be able to customize it. So I literally, and this is true, when I was training, we had a rule that you'd have to test out on the haircut, and if you failed 3 times, they would fire you.
Let go.
I failed the graduated bob 3 times, but they didn't fire me. If they did, I don't know. I might not be standing here right now. My whole career would have been different.
What do you think you would do if you got fired that day?
I have no idea. I really don't know. I don't know. I'm glad it didn't happen, but I remember there was like a meeting and everything, and I was a really good assistant. I was a good hard worker, and I did really well on all the other haircuts. When I got to the graduated bob, and I just dogged it 3 times in my tests, and they gave me another chance. They actually let me retest on it at the end of my program. So I got to do all the other haircuts that we were working on. I went through the contemporary haircuts, and then I had a retest on my graduated bob at the end, and I passed it at the end.
Yeah, so that means you had a great teacher that understood.
I did. I had a lot of great teachers. Yeah.
And that's really the thing. I mean, I think sometimes when you train people technically and you want them to be great, we sometimes only think of the technique. And it's about everything. It's about, being a hard worker. It's about showing up and how you show up. It's interacting with people. It's everything but. All those things are in place, make it easy to learn the technique. Those things out of place make it hard.
I like telling that story too because people always have that, have heard that story about how hard it was to train at Sassoon's and how hard you had to work. But the truth is there were so many caring people because they broke a rule for me. It wasn't like, joining the army or something. They're like, this guy's got potential, so we'll keep him, we'll put that rule to the side.
They knew you were going to be a hair boss even then.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So graduation can give texture. Graduation can control texture. Graduation can give bevel to hair. Graduation can loosen up a line. All right, so I've got that section balanced.
Yeah, Ian agrees with me. He said, yep. Gerard, mine was the same. I once had a graduated bob training evening in Manchester with Mark. I'm assuming Mark is. And we finished at 12 midnight. It was a great memory. Yeah. I could have used that training session. But
graduated bob is hard.
Yeah, and still to me, that exact technique of pivoting from the center. And, can I show you guys something?
Can't pivot with that hand.
This hand wasn't made for that technique. But I figured my ways out over the years, and that's the thing. All right, so let's get back into your haircut.
So the length.
Enough fun and games.
Enough fun and games. Yeah, length, just tying the crown into the graduation. And any technique where there's a transition in techniques or shapes, usually the crown is the last part of reference. So I always go through the crown and check that off. So what I could do is come through this way, because we have graduation at the back and a layer at the top. There'll be a corner in between, which is fine.
So would you say like all your basic shape, all your basic angles are in, and now it's all about checking and refining?
And make sure you didn't miss anything, make sure your transition was correct.
And your choice is to keep it uber clean, like you're not going to change to point cutting or anything like that?
No, I don't have to. I mean, I'll revert to point cutting once I've exhausted my technique. So if I've done
Explain what that means. I've heard you say that before. Explain what that means.
What it means is I've used the technique to the max to get the hair to do what I want it to do. And if the hair still needs to be softer or more layered or a different texture on the ends, then I'll go to my pointing. Right? So, and it's also important for beginners. Like when I train people, I really try to keep them off of pointing. Because I think what happens is you don't get to explore technique. So here's a good example. Go back to the graduate bob. Years of teaching graduate bobs. People cut the weight in. Advanced students, hairdressers, have been doing it for years. And the next thing they say, can I point into the weight now? Why? Because it's too heavy. I said, well, you worked very hard to get that heavy. And so what I show them is to just take the last couple of sections from the surface and lift a little higher, and then that way that they thought had to be pointed goes away.
A lot of times elevation can remove the
Elevation's
weight.
the key, yeah.
Little bend and blend. Lots of love coming in.
Should I go back through this real quick?
Yes, I do
No,
have
it's
one
good
more
for
question that I don't want to skip because I think it's a great question. I'd love to hear your take on it. Jane Carvelli is wondering, how long does it take you to do a haircut? You know, that's a kind of a big
How long
wide
do
open
I
question.
have?
That's always how I answer it. Yeah.
How long do
What
I
do you
have?
so? What do you mean by that?
Well, I don't work in, I do sometimes work in the salon, not very often, but if I do, I'll go up to Beverly Hills. I have a few special clients that I like to do. And we book on the 45, sometimes an hour. If they have it, I'll take it. But in the academy, we demo. If we do a demo, it could be anywhere from 2 hours, 3 hours. It could be 10 minutes. So it depends on what the lesson is in the academy, on the time that we have. You know, and in the salon, it's 45 minutes to an hour, I think.
Yeah,
Like
in
most.
Sassoon salons, people book on an hour.
45
usually
to
when
an
they're a
hour,
bit
it
younger,
depends, yeah.
And then 45 minutes is
And then an hour again when they're older.
Yeah.
Now,
exactly.
that's because of responsibility.
That's kind of what I did in my
But that's
career.
responsibility to
Yeah.
more than anything else, because all the other responsibilities you have.
But-
So what I'm checking off now is just the hairline that comes out from underneath. Okay, don't go and I have to get in here. You switch sides, Kel. And I don't want to recheck off all this graduation. The graduation's the texture. I just want to get what's underneath it. Okay, so I just want to get what comes out from that. So you put the pressure on, you want to get that out. So if she bends her neck, that doesn't come out. All right? And other than that, because sometimes people will graduate it and then they comb it down and cut the beautiful edge off that you've just put in. So you don't want
That's
to
training your eye to know what things are supposed to
what
look
goes and what stays.
like. Like we said, you know, cut it here, it falls here. What does it look like?
I love it. I love the idea. So really simple idea at the back of horizontal graduation. If you know the ABCs, it's A, B, done by Mark. Horizontal graduation to create just a beveled edge to a bob, especially on this wicked straight hair. So it has body and movement on the edge.
I was just thinking, I'm surprised I haven't seen this question yet, and it literally just popped up. Giovanni Ventimiglia is wondering what scissors you use. Says, nice scissors, what are you using?
Yeah, these are scissors I wish I made. These are Hikari's.
Are they the new Cosmos?
New Cosmos
Yeah.
Hikari's, yeah.
And that's still your favorite to this day?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I use. That's what I use. I love. They're nice balance for my hands. All right, I'm going to go through the layer part. So horizontal graduation to get the line and length in. And then front of the ear, wide section was taken, the whole front of the ear. The hair was lifted up and back. That's the top length. So you can see the difference in the... So when that falls over, you get a variation in length, which is what you would get also if you freehanded something. The next section I took, lifted that out with this section, pulled it back. Once that first section dropped out, I established that length. So I have this in, about 4 times. So it's 4 sections. Yeah.
And why did you choose not to put any in the center back? You just kind of went from the
love the way-
hairline. You want to keep that fullness in the profile?
Yeah, the fullness of the profile is fantastic, and I think that helps to encourage that texture at the front, because otherwise the hair is really fine hair. It goes flat to the head easily. So that'll support what's at the front. And I like on the profile, I mean, look at her profile, it's a killer. Right? Beautiful face.
Mm-hmm.
So I love that weight and that kind of flat shape at the crown.
So really
I
enjoyed
just wanted
this.
it all happen at the front. That was the answer to that.
Yeah. Just a wonderful lesson here, guys, on how to use technique to create lightness and texture. You can always, if you're just joining us now, I know lots of you, it's kind of surging right now. If you missed the beginning of the haircut, you can always go to Hairbrain's Facebook page, click on the videos tab, and watch this video from beginning to end. Stop, rewind, move it through, because Tracy shared a lot here. So I know you're getting close to the finish,
Yeah.
so
It's going to tickle the ends of the fringe because we're growing those out. But I love this. This is what I wanted to kind of share visually. If you see the layers from the top kind of just meld in with the fringe. So if you didn't have a fringe, which wasn't a question, but in case somebody's thinking, if I don't have a fringe, could we do this haircut?
Yeah.
Of course you can. So this just becomes a really beautiful soft layer at the front.
Face frame in a way.
Face framey, shaggy, shaky front. So the fringe, I just want, it's very simple as this. She has a wicked cowlick, so I'm very happy she's growing it out because it's really hard to cut it into a fringe. So I quite love the idea of her growing it out. And I love this kind of brushed back kind of fringe, and then all the texture behind it. I mean, I love that on her face, because it's all about the details of the face, and you know, this lip that's really great about her, and then the corner of the eye. So I love that kind of look, and then just your texture under it. I think it's really beautiful.
Yeah, shape came together beautifully. I love just the simple use of technique to create something very, very beautiful.
So fringe section is, classically speaking, for a beginner, I teach them, you know, to work parallel to the section, use a section that goes back to at least the round of the head. It's generally more of a triangle or a half moon. The triangle makes it sit back and sneaks it into the layering a bit more, so I'm going to do that here. And this is a really simple idea. I want to layer it so it's softer, so when it shifts on the cheekbone, it's not clunky there, which happens a lot with this kind of thing.
Philip Mitchell says he was here at Sassoon's this summer for a class, and it was world class.
Oh, good. Yeah, we love it. Like I said, our classes, we were so busy. Our team is amazing. They worked so hard this year because we had, you know, the summer was booked here on all our courses. So what I want to do here is just lift this up, really simple as that. Actually, I got to do it on this side. Sorry. I want to layer this so it's softer, but I want to keep all the length. So I'm just going to work right over the center part, leave the length, take the edge off. Nothing on the length will be touched. And then just everything to the middle. So everything right to that center.
So again, a kind of a square line and with a lot of overdirection.
A little concave fringe.
Yeah. And why did you feel the you know, a lot of people maybe would think, hey, that haircut's done. Why did you feel the need?
It wasn't touched from before. It was a fringe that was cut a few months ago. And then also because we were growing it out, so the way I just cut it is going to encourage the center part to just drape and drape gentler. So before it was cut blunt, so when it goes into the corners, it gets crowded there. So the layer leaves the length,
yeah.
It takes the
It's
weight.
that little thoughtful transformation there just makes that really flow in beautifully.
Yeah.
Gorgeous
Like
on Isabella's face. Yeah, it looks fantastic.
No blow dry. This was all done.
I have to just get my
under the
hands in here
scissors.
just because it's so beautiful.
No product, no nothing. Are you okay? You're checking it?
I'm not checking it. I'm just actually enjoying touching it and moving it.
It's beautiful, right?
I watched you check it. There's nothing left to check. It's perfect. How does it feel?
It feels so feathery and light.
Feathery and light.
Yeah.
We love that. All right, Tracy's going to put some finishing touches on here. We're at maximum capacity on our battery. So we definitely want you guys to see the finish before the battery dies. But again, beautiful. I'm really enjoying kind of scrubbing through that hair. So what are we putting in? Need some help opening that?
I got it. It's wrapped so beautifully. I ignored it. I just want a little bit of something to just get the end. So I'm just gonna
Let's
put
show
this
Kelly what you're
medium
using.
hold.
So at Sassoon, one of the product lines I work with is Davanez, are also great sponsors and friends of Hairbrained. So here you're using the medium hold pliable paste. All right, well, we've thoroughly enjoyed this. I know it's beautiful. You can keep playing with it, especially with that beautiful layering there. Let's just get one
Hair
final
off.
look. Hair off here.
Isabella, just stand up and take her down.
Absolutely. Guys, it's always a pleasure having great educators like Tracy. Thank you to the Sassoon Academy for hosting us again. We hope you got a lot out of this. Enjoyed this beautiful haircut. We'll see you again real soon with more education from Hairbrained Live. Thank you so much, Tracy.
Guys.